Okay, I'm going to talk a bit about trademarks and their relationship to advertising in general. In 2000, by some estimates, the average American was exposed to 3,500 ads per day, which was double the number 30 years before. During the same period, ad spending increased 10 times. U.S. networks on television broadcast 6,000 commercials per week, up 50% from 1983. Now, of course, the numbers are even more impressive. Ads are everywhere, from eggs in the supermarket to tunnels in the subway, and we spend most of our time staring at surfaces with ads on them. Ralph Sharp Brown, in a classic article that Ramsey Woodcock's article updates, raised a number of concerns about advertising and the power of trademarks. He thought advertising and trademarks were often just used to fool people into paying higher prices for common goods. This was a standard attitude during the mid 20th century. Distrust of entities with market power, including strong trademarks, was rampant. The idea was that the makers of Crest were fooling people into paying more for a product that was functionally identical to other, less famous, cheaper, but equally good toothpaste. The counterargument was that advertising creates value, even if it's only perception, and as long as the consumer perceives value, who are we to argue? Brown asked whether the consumer had a real choice because the non consumption oriented alternatives weren't presented. All we hear is that Crest toothpaste will make you attractive to other people. In the context of modern advertising, it's hard to believe that you don't need some beautifying aids, that you don't need something, some option from what Facebook or Instagram or some other set of influencers are telling you. Also, advertisers may waste money competing with each other for consumer attention. Advertising may be economically rational for individual advertisers fighting for market share, and at the same time, overall socially wasteful. Later, scholars like Jeremy Sheff added evidence from the psychological and marketing literature indicating that some of the value created is objectively false. Repetition makes consumers believe that products have effects that they simply don't have, and that we're unable to confirm for ourselves. What we'll discuss in class is what ought to be done. If some of the value created is illusory or socially wasteful, does that imply anything about the appropriate result in trademark cases like Stork versus Sahadi, or in the Champion spark plug cases, if some of the reputation of Champion spark plugs or the Stork Club is undeserved? Brown suggested that truth in advertising laws could help, so consumers get truthful information. That certainly could help with some of the problems Woodcock identifies. Perhaps persuasion in ads ought to be regulated so they don't overwhelm information in ads. Then Landis and Posner, in their excerpt, give you the law and economics perspective. The function of trademarks is primarily to minimize search costs. The consumer then uses trademarks as shorthand for the quality she wants. The result, fortunately enough, is an incentive for trademark owners to invest in quality, so the consumer will believe that the mark represents a consistent quality. Landis and Posner respond to the claim that advertising is wasteful to the extent that it leads consumers to pay higher prices for Clorox than for Rite Aid bleach, both of which have the exact same chemical properties. And they say the consumer has more assurance of consistent quality with a national brand. And the question is willingness to spend money on advertising really a sign of quality? The advertising sort of seems excessive for that purpose. All you really need for an assurance of quality is a solid trade name, not happy dancing bunnies in a field and paying Beyonce millions of dollars to cut an ad for you. There's also fascinating research finding that people who are experts in a field are much more likely to buy generics in that field. So pharmacists buy generic painkillers. They buy the CVS brand aspirin. Cooks buy generic sugar and flour, whereas pharmacists buy Domino sugar and cooks buy Aleve. And that's an interesting result. Trademarks may be serving as a substitute for expertise, and perhaps trademark reliance is still cheaper than acquiring relevant expertise in all the grocery aisles. But now you know, and you can save some money. Landis and Posner also assume that the potential trademarks are infinite. And one question that you should consider is, if they're wrong and there is actually a finite number of memorable marks, does their argument have to be modified, and how much and in what ways? Then Jessica Littman will respond to both kinds of utilitarians when she talks about Breakfast with Batman. She is criticizing a view of trademark that the legal realists called if value, then right. If exclusive rights could make someone money, we grant them. Her response is, why not default to competition instead? Let people compete to give you the value. Just because something does have value doesn't mean it ought to be property. If the value of the shirt that says Nike is that it shows that you like Nike, why shouldn't anybody be able to compete to give you that value, as long as they make their actual affiliation with Nike or lack thereof clear? The shirt would be a lot cheaper in that circumstance. So that is the kind of question we'll take up in class, and I will see you then.